Hello, welcome. This is Best Foot Forward Shoes, the podcast, and this is episode 44. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us on YouTube. If you want to see all the visuals, you can see myself, you can see our beautiful guest today, which is Mr. Hassan. He is the host of My First Kicks pod. Thank you so much to everybody for also listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast. I really do appreciate that. I don't forget anyone. I do check the metrics on those as well, and thank you so much to everybody for listening on that platform, as well as YouTube, of course. Thank you so much to everybody for subscribing. We've had some awesome guests this year, and this man is absolutely no exception. If you are not following the My First Kicks podcast, you really need to. You need to go check out his work. He's done so many cool interviews with lots of different people, lots of different walks of life, different backgrounds, different, sneaker interests. Some people who, design sneakers, some people who photograph sneakers. All of those things combined to create such an awesome podcast with a great conversation. And he's been very, very polite and gracious with his time to be able to come onto this podcast. So I really appreciate it, man. How are you doing over there?
No, I'm great. That was a great intro. I don't know if you listened to the episode where I'm like, I don't know how to take compliments well. This is I was feeling myself get hot as you're like, you should check out. I'm like, oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, you're over there.
Really appreciate you having me on.
No worries, man. No worries. We I'm here in Brisbane, Australia, for anyone who didn't know, and Hass is over there in New York. Over there, you're finishing your summer, right? You've kind of, you had your block parties. You've had a fair amount of events going on, and do you feel like the city is kind of winding down a little bit, where you're heading towards the winter months, or you feel like it's just getting started?
No, I think because of how COVID treated us, right? A lot of everybody's just catching up. I feel like there's something going on every week. Am I personally dialing back? Yes, I have to, because I do the podcast and I do go to sneaker stuff, but then I also work and I have to go out for work too. So I'm just going out like 4 or 5 times a week, because people are like, hey, we got to take your team out to go eat, and I'm just like, all right, I just want to go home sometimes. But yeah, I don't think it's winding down. Like, just a lot of stuff will start being indoors. That's it.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, well, I mean, New York is, a sprawling metropolis of tons of events and, hidden little side streets, and it's a place that I definitely would love to go. As an Australian, we kind of have a lot of American culture ingrained in us in terms of, the media, in terms of sports. As you can tell, big Ravens fan, if anyone didn't know that. So kind of excited for the American football season to have started. I think by the time I release this podcast, the first week of football will have already happened. So, you're not quite seeing my level of happiness or sadness by if the Ravens won or lost. I haven't asked you yet. I know you're a big you're a Mets fan, baseball, but are you into football? Are you ready, excited for that season to start?
I already did one fantasy draft. I got another one tomorrow. I think I'm in another fantasy football game. I don't know, fantasy football league with Mero, previous guest of the pod. But that one's a lot more fun. But I try to cap myself at 3 because it's just way too much football. Because I don't know if you like check out Red Zone.
Yeah,
100%. So Red Zone, you put that on with your fantasy football, and you're watching your team just hopefully take you to the next week. But that's it. I'm always dialed in.
Yeah, man. I'm in 3 leagues, but 2 of the leagues are with the same people, if you know what I mean. It's a dynasty league and a redraft league with the same people. So it's kind of the same chat, but it's just like one's been ongoing for like 10 years and the other one's kind of does every year. So 3 is kind of the max. It can get expensive and it can also get very time consuming. And especially when you have a job and you create sneaker content and, have a family and all that, like it can get really on top of you. But it's good. I think having a interest, a passion like that, sneakers, football, sports, all of those kind of things combining, it really makes your life feel very full. And you're a man about town. You went to a sneaker event in Portland recently, which we are also going to chat about. I believe you went to the Nike headquarters. You went to the Adidas headquarters with a couple of the guys who have been on this podcast before, and I would consider friends, Aaron and AD Sneaks. And man, it looked like a hell of a time. Let's start off a little bit with what that event was and kind of how you got invited and what was the overall experience of it.
Yeah. So I guess so. This event started 3 years ago. It started as Aaron AC Cooper's like thing called The Gathering, and he wanted to bring a lot of people that just kind of, he thought that were people that really embrace the culture around sneakers and especially around his footwear that he developed, right? Because, you know, he's an iconic designer. I mean, I got one. This will lead into how I got there, but there's an iconic shirt. I feel it's an iconic shirt, but from Nike Talk that has like Aaron Cooper, Tinker, Wilson Smith. There's a couple, two other designers. I'm sorry, I forgot. I blanked on the other two, but that shirt was kind of the gateway into building a friendship between Aaron AC Cooper and some of the people on Nike Talk. In Style Shoes 1999, who's aka Tom. Me and him, we got really cool with each other because he started listening to my podcast and he really enjoyed that I wasn't necessarily highlighting the sneakers. I was always highlighting the people. And that's one of Aaron's messages. So you have to come to one of these, you have to get invited to one of these things, but he has like 3 platforms of how he thinks as the world moves forward. And I always really pinpoint around the domino piece that he talks about, because it does, you have to be the first domino to fall to have everybody else align up as you're putting down the dominoes. And so in this scenario, I put myself forward of just like, hey, I want to make this podcast. Tom took that chance on me to invite me to a smaller gathering, which it was in New York, and it was out of the blue, super like I was sweating. That's how like I was like what? Why? I don't belong here. Like I was having imposter syndrome and all this stuff, because like, you know, one thing about me, I love sneakers, right? But what really encapsulated me was the culture around it more than the actual shoes themselves. Like, to me, it's always been about the lengths people go, and within the shoes or for the shoes or before the shoes, or, you know, you only have 2 feet, nobody can step in your footsteps, and that's always been my thing when it came to this. And I've always been online just asking people like, hey, you know, tell me about why you want this, or why are you trying to get these, or, you know. And so it was always been like that type of thing. So when I got to that small gathering, it was more of me just kind of like, it felt like I was finally in a meetup with people that wanted to know more about the stuff that we were always curious about. And so having that line of communication was really dope. And so that went from, hey, come to this. Then it was, hey, we're doing this thing in Portland, and I think you would, like, I got a phone call. Hey, we're doing this thing in Portland. I think you would really love to come out and do this. And I was just like, what? And so I jumped on that. And
nice.
As soon as I heard, as soon as I heard that we were going to go to Nike, I put in my paid time off at work, and I was just like, I gotta go. There's no way I'm going to miss out.
Yeah, for sure, man. It looked like a hell of a time. Again, if you don't follow Hass on Instagram, I will post his link to follow him just down below in the description as well as also, of course, the Instagram for your podcast, and also the podcast link on YouTube. So all of those links will be down below if you want to check any of those out. And I highly recommend that you do. He's a great follow. And I also saw you go to the Unheard of event earlier this year. Sitting here in Australia, I do get a fair bit of FOMO because we don't have as much sneaker kind of events going on, and it's kind of something that I really wish we could be a part of. But hey, with the beauty of the internet, we can check that out. And, you know, Philip is someone that you chatted to on your, like, you took your podcast remote. Let's just say that you took it to the event in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that was really cool to see. It's obviously a little bit of a different challenge when you have a studio. You have a studio that is very curated. It's, you know, you're comfortable. You got your lights, you got your cameras. Taking it remote can be a little bit of a challenge. I myself have just recently experienced that with a little bit of technical difficulties, let's just say. That
Yeah.
podcast is yet to be released because I'm, it's kind of one of those perfectionist things where you're like, the quality wasn't quite good enough, and I'm just
Hmm.
holding on to whether or not I should or not. Yeah, it's an internal battle. But
I say
besides,
put it out, man.
besides, okay,
As somebody that, I mean, uh, because of that specific trip, right?
yeah,
So Phil asked me to come out because he wanted to do a live podcast to talk about the grandma's couches and unveil the secret colorway that he had, the friends and family colorway. And so it was me and Sneaky Leak, and we did that. And I recorded the whole thing, but I didn't know I didn't know what I was using, right? So
yeah,
I rented the equipment, but I wasn't familiar with what I was doing,
yeah.
right? The live show was supposed to be taped, and that was supposed to be episode 218. So it lives on the YouTube, but it sounds terrible. It looks terrible.
Yeah.
I but because I promised it, I put it out. And I also think, like, you recorded it.
Yeah.
If you have something, I say put it out. You never know. And
Yeah.
then I encourage people to, even if you don't think it lives up to your standards, to always put it out, because you never know when somebody, what if that, like, somebody was actually comes across that and just like, wow, I can't wait. And then that's the one that hooks that person to watch the rest of your series, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just like, I
Yeah.
say put it out.
I do often think about this, the stuff that you post, in your early kind of content creation. You look back on it and you're like, oh man, that was terrible. And some people have had the kind of thing where they go back and actually delete that old stuff. I'm definitely not a fan of doing that, because it kind of does show and reflect where you have been. And I think if people find your older stuff and they like it, and then they see that you've built upon it, then it's even better, because they can see the growth from where you've started to where you are now. Not only just in sneaker podcasts, but also any sort of reviews or something like that. When it comes to better camera, better audio, all that sort of stuff, it's all just like a journey.
Yeah.
And you said something before with that, when you created the podcast, you were talking about that sneakers are more than just the sneakers; it's about the people who are wearing them. I've chatted recently to a guy named Jay Guidos, who's got Jay's Fire Fridays, and he always says that.
Shout out Jay.
So that kind of that always kind of resonates with me, and he does a great like weekly post, and it's always awesome to see people tapping into that, man. But I suppose one of the main questions that I do want to ask, which kind of leads from your podcast, is where does this kind of come from? Where does this sneaker passion come from? Where does the love for the culture come from? Is it recent? Do you love it as a kid? Like, how did this all start for you?
I mean, I've always loved sneakers, but I think it really turned and it really turned its corner, or reared its head, is when I bought my first Nike SB, because got my first job working at GameStop, and I was like, all right, cool, I don't have to pay for games anymore. Right now, whatever I want, I pay 50% off, whatever, like, or basically steal it, whatever. It don't matter. Yeah. I don't have to pay for games, right? And so I got my first check, and I was like, all right, cool, now I can buy sneakers. So I'm like doing all this research. I come across, like, and this is what I was really, really big into skateboarding. So I would watch X Games, all this stuff. I was heavy. Bob Bergquist is my GOAT. Yep. And so I'm like, all right, I got to find if Nike has a skateboarding shoe. And this is like 2006, maybe 2005 or something like that. Yep. And I stumbled across NikeSB.org. And I ended up just posting on there religiously for weeks and weeks and weeks. And this is before I got the job. And so when I got my first check, I was like, I'm already on here. Yeah. I might as well. I can't just be on here with no Nike SBs. So I went to skateparkoftampa.com and I copped my first pair, which was the khaki SBs. And ever since then, it was just like, I'm a history buff. Like, as soon as I find something interesting that's like history based, I sink myself into it, right? When it comes to music, when it comes to fashion, when it comes to sneakers or history, like the American history, or like Black culture or Spanish culture, or whenever I find myself like there's more onions, I peel the onion back to reveal more of it. I just start throw myself right into it. And so that's what happened. And then I ended up like learning about just all the different types of sneaker cultures, finding Nike Talk, finding ISS, Soul Collector, going on these websites, and I would spend hours and hours just being on there. And that's what always just pulled me in. It was just like there was always more to find. Like, one thing I say that I've been saying recently that I miss now is the myths that we used to create on the forums. Like I don't think we'll ever have another moment where it's like the undefeated fours. It's like somebody's on there on the forums being like, yo, there's 72 pairs they just dropped randomly and I got them, and then you just only hear about it through the grapevine when you're on like the lines. Like, I think that's all gone, right? So like now it's just like stories. Like, how do we continuously bring more stories to the forefront and that show that streetwear, sneaker culture is a lot more than just the price tag. So
yeah, you must have been absolutely captured by what Wilson Smith was saying when he was talking about the designing the 17 and the 16. Like some of that stuff about the back heel tab being a little bit more sturdy because Michael Jordan wasn't on his back foot anymore. He was trying to be on the front foot. Like that sort of like collaboration between those two, real life basketball and the shoe. That must have just been awesome.
Yeah, him talking about that, like, and also the adding in this is the shoe is described as like jazz, like, because jazz is all about like improvisation.
Yeah.
So the 16 and 17s have that like idea about it. The 17s more so because if you watch one of the original ads which he played in at there, it was like, they had like jazz musicians playing, and then they're like, jazz is about improvisation. How can you improvise without the ball? And it's just like, Ray Allen just like going crazy. But it's like, I love that type of stuff. I love the like added nuances around these things because I'm a big thread puller is what I call myself. Like whenever I interview people, I am always just like trying to see, all right, let me find this thread. And then I find a thread and like, let me start pulling it back. Let me see what else is under there. Let me see what else is under there. And so, when it comes to small stuff like that, or even like the Salehis or the Behind You or the Bacons, which are my grails, like hearing how like, when I had Dave on the podcast and he talked about like, I just wanted it to look like it stacked on each other, just look like a pair, like some bacons, like a bacon in the supermarket. And I was like, that's so funny. So
it can come from almost anywhere. And have you kind of always been interested in interviewing? Like, is that why you wanted to start your podcast? Like, did you try and take one part of your life and try and make it about sneakers? Did it just kind of come up organically?
No, so that's funny. I've never been asked this. So when it comes to podcasts, I have such a love for the form of podcast, like the art form of podcast. I used to listen to podcasts on Winamp on my computer. I used to listen to it on my iPod. Like shout out Kevin Smith and tell him Steve Dave, and like those are my first beginnings of like learning what a podcast is. And so I've always wanted to make one. And so I tried one about video games with my boy John. I call him Frenchie, who we did one on video games, and we did like 2 episodes that we never put out. We just held on to them. And then the year before the pandemic, me and my buddy Derek, who he's like a pun master. This guy's like, he wins puns. He like does puns like as a like he's nasty at him, right? And so we used to be really big fans of this other podcast called Get Up On This, and Get Up On This ended up ending because the two hosts decided to pass the baton to another set of hosts, and they kind of were like, all right, we're not doing this anymore. So we made Get Up On This 3.0. We took the whole shtick, and we actually garnered like a small little following because of that. But when it came to like me doing my own, I was always relying on somebody else. I was always like, I want to do it, but I need this person to be my guest host. Oh, I need this person to be my guest host. And so And I used to work at Comedy Central, so I had a bunch of friends that were comedians, and I'm like, you got to have a podcast, do it with me. Like I would be like, I'd go to my buddy Will Miles, who's like the 6th episode or something like that, and I'm like, well, you got to do this podcast with me. You got to do this podcast with me. And then he moved to LA, and I was like, damn it. And then I would go to my buddy Gastor, and I told him the whole idea. Yo, it's called My First Kicks. I interview people. We interview people. We talk about, you know, their sneaker stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then this was like 2017, 2018. It was 2018. I came up with the idea, and I was going to him and being like, yo, I gotta do it. And then I started going with him to do his spots around the city. Mm-hmm. So like once a week, I'd go watch him do comedy because he's a great comedian. If you don't know who Gasol Almonte is, check out his This Is Not Happening about Brooklyn Batman. It is hilarious. Yeah, it is so funny. But I would go with him, and then he'd after every spot, he'd be like, so when you start the podcast, I'm gonna start it if you don't start it. And I was like, I'm gonna start it. And I kept saying that for 2 years. 2 years. Yeah. The same idea for 2 years, and nobody made it. So then pandemic happened, and I was just like, I mean, you know, I've been in sneakers and around sneakers for a very long time, and my favorite part of it was like community and conversations and the culture. And when I was like really entrenched in it again, because I jump in and jump out a lot, especially when I don't have the money to buy stuff. Yeah, it makes things easier, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but I jumped in and jumped back then right before the pandemic, and I noticed that like a lot of these there wasn't real conversations anymore, and there wasn't a podcast that did what I was doing, what I wanted to hear when I listened to podcasts or like sneaker podcasts. Like everybody was always reviewing sneakers, talking about what's coming out. It was all like kind of offshoots of Quick Strike. I don't know if you remember Quick Strike.
Yeah.
Shout out Russ and rest in peace DJ Clark Kent. But they influenced the style of sneaker podcast that we saw for like the last like 10 years. Everybody kind of like, you know, did some sort of, oh, I'm gonna bash these coming out. I'm gonna talk about these coming out, and then just like So it wasn't really about the people that they were, you know, talking to.
So you feel like you were kind of filling a sort of oversaturated market with a certain niche that wasn't quite filled. Like that was kind of your in, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I love podcasts. Like I love like the actual creation of the podcast of like, I want to be listening to a conversation that I wish I was in the room for. And so that's always my goal whenever I make a podcast, whenever I make an episode. But I always felt like that was missing. I feel like a lot of these podcasts were more shows. Like there were like TV shows, like, you know, there weren't necessarily like, oh yeah, you know, I really wanted to hear this story. And one of my biggest inspirations, my bad, because I went on kind of tangent also too. But like one of my biggest inspirations is the Crab Feast. This is a podcast called the Crab Feast. And so my buddy, well, they're both my buddies actually. So Ryan Sickler and Jay Larson, they used to do this podcast where they would sit in, bring in a guest, and they would share stories each other, right? Like that. And there are so many comedy podcasts that do that, and all of them are great because everybody has different stories. And I felt like that just did not exist within sneakers or even streetwear. None of that existed. Like it's always people telling people like, oh, this is what you should be doing. And it's always like advice given or like, how do you get into the industry or like the insights about the industry, but it's never about like personal connections. And that's what always brought me to sneakers. It was always the personal connections, you know?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of podcasts out there, especially now, like you were talking about when you first started listening to podcasts. I remember me first listening to, back in like 2013, I want to say. Like, you remember Ryan Russillo? the
Yeah.
basketball guy. Like he had a basketball
Uh-huh.
podcast. There's like a comedy duo in Australia called Hamish and Andy, if anyone from Australia knows
Uh-huh.
them. And man, they just had a podcast, and I was just listening to it in the car all the time, and I would flip flop, and I still do flip flop between going from music, because sometimes I get sick of listening to music, like the same things all the time. So I'd listen to podcasts,
Yeah.
and then I get sick of listening to podcasts and go and listen to music. So it was
Yeah.
always like a kind of escape. And I'm one of those people who, I think you're kind of in the same vein where you kind of have an hyperactive mind, and you kind of always need to be doing something. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
listening to a conversation kind of fills that little void sometimes. And
Yeah.
it's great, I know there's people who are listening to this who are doing chores or making dinner or something, and I'm sure that it's hard to visualize people listening, especially when you're sitting in a room by yourself, like you do. But I think that it's good to have that feedback that people actually listen to it. And yeah, podcasts are just a piece of the industry, the market, that I think is very hype driven. They're always talking about
Mm-hmm.
releases coming out. They're always talking about, oh, this shoe bricked, this shoe that, and
Yeah.
I feel like the void that was left in Australia, just in specifically Australia, there wasn't really an Australian kind of sneaker podcast in that I'd
Mm-hmm.
seen. And so I kind of wanted to, I suppose, bring a unique Australian voice where,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of a part of the world that's very far away from America and the UK, but we still have a very good culture and huge appreciation for sneakers. And I think that there's so much to be learned from talking about different cultures and chatting to people. Like I love, American culture, as I said before. So man,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, it all lines together. And again, really appreciative that you have come onto the podcast, and everyone from around the world that has come on. I think you're the first guy from New York, actually, which is
Hey, I'll
awesome.
take that.
Which is
I'll take
surprising
that.
for a city this big, that New York is, that you're the first person. But I guess with those podcasts kind of comes creative burnout sometimes, especially making content. Do you ever feel like you are getting close to creative burnout? Have you ever experienced that? And what would you kind of do to kind of fix any sort of burnout that you're feeling?
Ooh. I've also never been asked this too, but I am always burnt out, to be honest. Like, I'll be honest. I'll be very, very honest. Because this is not my only thing,
Yeah.
right? I'm still, I work in advertising, so, and I work in advertising as basically like a project manager, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in charge of making sure stuff gets done. And now when I turn that off, I have to turn that brain off, which doesn't happen because then I have to project manage myself to book guests, to book time, to make sure I'm cutting all these clips out because I'm doing them myself. I edit the episode, putting my little graphics. Now I'm adding Patreon shout outs at the end of every episode. And so creative burnout, I truly believe I'm always in the state of creative burnout. Because I've always wanted to be like, oh, I want to add this, or I want to add that, or I want to do this, or I want to put this graphic in there, I want to do that. But when it's time to actually do it, I'm like, I can't. No, my brain, I'd rather try to kind of take the not the easy road, but the more I guess stationary, template filled versus trying new things here and there, which I always come up with new ideas, but I'm starting to feel like, all right, every 6 months, before it was let me keep trying new things every day until something clicks. But now for me, it's all right, every 6 months, because if I do it too often, I'm just using my brain way too much. And then when it comes to the night, I'm just I'll be restless because I'm I should have done this, or I add this, because I'm very, like you said earlier, oh yeah, it's good to have your older stuff up so the progress you've made. I hate everything I made. I make I just did an interview yesterday. I think it sucks. That's the type of person I am. I am because I'm always just I should have asked this, or I should have done this, or I should have did this. Oh, maybe I didn't do this right or that right. And it's just I'm the people. If anybody comes at me or whatever, I'm always just cool, because I'm the biggest critic of myself. If somebody tells me, yeah, that episode was trash, I'll be like, okay. But it to me, I'm that episode was trash when I did it. But I'm just very critical of myself. So yeah,
it's kind of
I end up with that.
It's kind of like how you think back on embarrassing things that you've done, and you kind of think, oh, that was so embarrassing. I can't believe I did that in front of everybody. And then you'll like bring that up to someone. They're like, I don't even remember you did that. Like,
Yeah.
I put out that piece of content. Oh, it was so bad. It was trash. And someone's just, it's literally like on their phone, they just scroll to the next one and it's instantly kind of forgotten. So I think that really does help kind of stop any sort of, like you said, posting stuff that you don't think is very good. Just do it, especially for someone. If I was going to give any advice to anyone who wants to like start making any sort of sneaker content or any content in general, whatever it is, whatever you're passionate about, just do it, because you never know what's going to click, what's going to go somewhat viral or get any sort of attention. Because but the thing is, don't start it to try and get your attention instantly. Like, do you feel like there's a lot of people now that kind of jump on Instagram, social media, and kind of want to be immediately recognized straight away without really doing the work? Do you feel like that's the case? Like, I don't want to, you don't have to name names or anything, but do you feel like that's kind of been a recent trend, or has that kind of been going on for a long time?
I think it's been going on for a long time. Also, I don't necessarily, I mean, I will name people, but like, I don't think anybody that does that currently is like that, where it needs to be called out.
Yeah.
I do think that, because I think that's the world we live in now, right? I think we live in a world where people are looking for that attention. Like I feel like we all want some kind of attention, you know? And I do think some people are a lot harsher on others for wanting that attention. And I think it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly normal. I think that because with this, not a lot of people realize that they're being creative, and not a lot of people realize that they're stretching their creative bone when they're doing content or when they're making something. And so this is sometimes their first foray into being a creative. And then when I explain that to them, it's like, no, I just wanted to, make something just to, I'm like, no, you're literally putting like text on stuff. You're taking the time to write stuff out. You're trying things. You're being creative. And I implore everybody to try that, because I was stuck in a monotonous job for a hot minute after I worked at MTV for a little bit, but like I was editing videos, so I was stretching my creative bone. But like I was stuck in a monotonous job where I was doing spreadsheet stuff every single day. And so that kind of just like, I was like, damn, I really need to be creative, because you like, when you make something, it's big, small, if it doesn't go viral or whatever, it's fulfilling as hell. And it's like nothing until you start doing it, it's really hard to explain. But we all know it's very terrifying to get to that point, to put something out. But the soonest you start being really consistent, and the soonest you start really just like flexing that creativity, like it's so much more fulfilling than just being like, I'm just gonna go on somebody's page and tell them that they suck. Like, so yeah.
No, I feel that. Yeah, definitely try it before you criticize. Like, try and be. Not that I see a lot of criticizing. I suppose my eyes don't really search for people trying to be negative too much. I'm trying to always kind of be positive. And most of the people that we follow, like, we spoke about Jay Guidos before, like everyone's kind of very positive around all of that sort of stuff. And that's like, I don't follow or look at comments on, like, say, for example, Sneaker News, Sneaker Freaker, all those sort of things. You dive into the comments in there, and like you can find some of the worst of parts of the sneaker internet. But it's where you decide to look. So I think that you got to be specific on trying to curate your positivity or negativity when it comes to sneakers.
Well, the one thing about the internet is it's so massive, you will find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for somebody to be hating on this specific pair of Jordans, you will find that, right? Or you can be that person. But that's all up to you. Like, how I always say, just like it's about, it's how do you look at impact? What is you want your impact to be? Because everybody can get the views, everybody can get the likes, but is your impact, or what you're doing, creating impact? Is it just for that? Is it just for the views and likes and people telling you you're great? Or is it because you want to connect to somebody and you want to make an actual impact? Like, that's all just about how you gauge it. And I think that, like, the internet muddles a lot of like these types of conversations because it's so fast paced and boom, 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 and negativity will always rise to the top because it's easier to disagree than it is to agree.
Yeah.
And so you will come across that, like you will come across like all the negative comments and be like, why does this one have 100,000 likes, but the person under is saying like, yo, this is a great video.
Yeah.
And you're like, nobody liked it, and you're just like, that's crazy, you know? So yeah,
it's like the kind of studies where people have, tried to show people images of car crashes or horrible things, and their brain lights up in certain areas that positivity doesn't light up. And so people are often drawn to the kind of rush that you get from seeing those negative, and it just kind of creates a different kind of experience. But again, trying to stay positive and do all that sort of stuff is, and again, we're really just talking about sneakers. Like, this is not life or death. Like, there's so many more important things going on in the world right now. So I mean, we're chatting about something that inherently is rather light, and I hope that we can kind of keep it that way. And I think that's a really good like encapsulation of everything around your podcast in terms of how you started it. You've had some great guests on. You've had just the ones that come to mind, Beamer Williams on a couple times, ones that I've seen with Tyler, who's Arab Lincoln. Your on-site ones at the Unheard of brand with Philip. Your most recent one with Ari. Like, has there been, I guess, not so much a standout guest, but has there been any like standout moments where you are sitting down with someone and you're like, wow, that was a great insight. Like, I can't believe that I just captured that on my podcast, and it's kind of feeling really fulfilling.
That's like the toughest question for me, because I'll be honest with you, once that episode is done, like my brain just like it like logs it, like categorizes it in the back of the brain, because I got so much things I'm doing. But I mean, I will say, so I've known Kid Mero for real, like since 2017. And then when I launched this year's 200th episode with him, and like, I mean, his story with the Freddy Kruegers, and then Complex picking that up and posting that, and I was just like, this is like, I've never gotten this type of attention. It's very interesting. But like, that whole episode was so fun because I've had several conversations with him, and this is stuff I've never heard him talk about. And this is a person that has his own podcast, has been on a ton of other podcasts, and I'm hearing stuff that he's never said for the first time. So I was there, and my best friend D, he helps me with the podcast. He's like, after, he was like, yo, that episode was insane. And like, I was just like I had to like stop, because it zoomed by, and like, I was hearing these stories, like the stories with him and his ex slicing all the steep texts in his room. I was like, man, this is crazy. And then it like I was just kind of like a taken back, because it felt more of like what I've been looking to do with the podcast, like just connect over sneakers like that, but like have people just be like, yo, tell me something crazy that happened to you. And again, to capture like two really crazy stories with, him having his cat peeing all over the Freddy Kruegers, and like, yeah, it was just crazy.
Yeah, I think you can kind of get lost in the kind of moment. And one thing that I like to see that you do on your podcast is you kind of do let your guests kind of lay out, like just what we were talking about it before. The most recent one with Ari, well, the one that I most recently seen, he was kind of talking about stuff that has no relation to sneakers for a long time, and there was no like, I'm just going to butt in here and stop you there, let's get back on track kind of thing. And I think that, like you said, people are often having podcasts in the background. It's kind of nice to have just a conversation flow like that, because he's obviously a guy who's got a lot of opinions, lot to say, and you can recognize that and kind of just let him go, sort of thing. And
that's the beauty about like conversations, because that's what I want my podcast to be seen as. Like, I want, like I've said, like the format is like, I want people to hear this and feel like they're a fly on the wall, and like it's a conversation where it's like you're talking to yourself as you're listening to it. And those are my favorite type of podcasts, right? Like if you ever listen to the Honeydew, that's how it's built out like that too, where it's just like you're hearing these stories and you're like, damn, wow, that's crazy. No, he really said that? That's great. Like, you know, I want that kind of like conversation happening on the listener end as well. But Ari's episode is, you know, it didn't get as much love as I thought it would, but I am planning to do, because he's such a wealth of knowledge, is to, I sectioned out, I told him, I was like, before we did the episode, I was just like, listen, I want to section out your decades, because you've been in this game for a really long time. So we're going to focus on the 80s and you growing up. Like, this is the first episode. And then the second episode, we're going to talk about the 90s. Like, and then we're going to talk about the third episode. We're going to talk about the 2000s and like the menthols and all that stuff. So we're going to get there eventually. Because I mean, but it's like whenever I tell people like, yeah, I'm going to have like I've spoken to Jeff Staple and he wants to do the podcast. And I'm like, when I tell people, yeah, I'm going to get Jeff Staple, people's always like, I mean, but he's talked about everything already.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's true.
You know, And I'm like, yeah, but he hasn't talking to me. And he hasn't spoken to me. And the way I'm going to figure it out is like, we're not going to touch on all the things that because why? Like, I would just easily be like, oh, yeah, just check out his episode with such and such. Right. But let's talk about like you, your family. Let's talk about what inspires you currently. Like, let's do that. But I'm trying to have these conversations because a lot of people are like, especially with Ari, it was just like, if I'm gonna ask you one question, my questions are very leading into just like, I want you to open up to me, right? I want to know about you, because a lot of the time when I have some people on, it's like this. It's like, this is my first time interacting with you. This is my first time, my first conversation. These are usually how it goes with me in public. So getting that experience just recorded with somebody of note. And so like, that's how I treat it.
Well, I think Jeff Staple, all he wants to talk about for the rest of his career is the pigeon dunks. That's what you need to interview him on. Like, that's the only thing he wants to talk about. That's what he said. But I think that kind of tweaked in my brain when you wonder about people who haven't made something and they want to make something, and the first objection, or one of the first objections, is like, oh, but it's already been done. Like, how many people have been like, oh, I can't do sneaker reviews because there's like thousands of sneaker reviewers on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, but you're not reviewing sneakers. Like, I kind of trying to think of that everyone kind of has a unique kind of voice, and I think that kind of plays into my favor in terms of being Australian. There's not a huge amount of like Australian YouTubers out there, and I think, you know, even just the accent being different from a lot of different people that people in America and the UK would have interacted with, and I think people might gravitate towards that. So I think everyone can provide like a fresh voice, kind of like what you said.
For sure. So I always say this because like I think about things probably maybe way too deeply sometimes, but like I think about things when it comes to sneaker podcasts or like becoming like a voice. And I did this solo episode where I talked about I'm not a voice and this and that, because there are people in this that feel like their voice needs to be the loudest in the room, right? But then there is people that are like you, where it's like, I have a voice, I'm trying to create this thing, this is my unique perspective, right? And that's a valid way of starting, because you're coming out of it more earnest than somebody's saying like, y'all should listen to me, you know? But it's like, but you have no background in footwear. You're like, why should we listen to you? You know, just because you're pumping all of this content and being, you know, like if you are somebody of note that has worked within the industry, someone like Bima, like where if you speak, it's going to come with that added, I've worked here, I've been in these rooms, right? Then that becomes a valid way to take, but you take that and you flip it on its head and you got you where you're like, hey, if you didn't know, Australia loves sneakers too. Yeah. And you're like, now you're talking about your thing. My biggest thing is I'm always going to talk about stuff that I know. I'm never going to be out of depth because like, I'm not reaching and being like, this is what Nike's doing wrong because they're not doing the marketing and this and that. And I'm just like, that's not me. I know what I'm talking about. I know my stories. I want the person in front of me to tell me their stories. I'm going to use my stories to get their stories. Like, that's it. Like,
Yeah. And I think people can definitely see that when they do watch your podcast. And of course, you've done over 200 episodes, which is an insane amount. And I think that if anyone, wants to go back into those back catalogs, I know you've kind of forgotten about them already, but go back and watch any of those episodes with like Beamer or someone who kind of has that industry knowledge, and it really does shed a different kind of light on that industry. And I think that just being on the consumer side of sneakers sometimes can be very one-sided, and you're kind of fed a lot of stuff, and it's kind of fun, as you said, thread pulling, where you want to see how the sausage is made, I want to see why this is going, and you can kind of see trends when you do that. Like, for example, some of the latest sneaker releases with like, for example, the 204L, you can kind of see that from New Balance. You've seen the formula from brands now where they do a collaboration and then they release all the GR sneakers in different bunches with different styles, suedes, mesh, or that sort of thing. You've seen it on, I can like 15 to 20 different sneaker silhouettes that have come in the last few years, it's crazy. You can kind of see that formation going. And I think that might be a good segue to ask you, what's kind of been your favorite part of the year so far in terms of sneakers? We've talked a lot about your podcast, but I'd really like to know your thoughts about sneakers in terms of this year's momentum, where it's kind of come from, and how this year has felt for you in terms of sneaker releases.
I mean, it's been nonstop, right? I feel like it came out. I told myself this year I was only going to buy 6 sneakers, and then when I took stock this morning, I was like, damn, I definitely bought like 10 pairs. So like it made me break like the rule that I set for myself, because I was like, oh man. But yeah, I got the undefeated 4s, and just recently, when I was at Nike, when I was in Portland, I went to Adidas employee store, and I got the Mega Ride S2 Cage. Very cool shoe. Reminds me of the what is that? What's Nike's Sunder? It reminds me of the Air Sunder. With like shocks at the back and the back. I mean, we got. Oh, I almost said something I shouldn't have said. We got the Air Maxes we just talked about. The Yu-Gi-Oh. Those I'm definitely trying to get on the 12th. We also have J-Tip Saucony coming out. We got Westside Gun Saucony coming out also this year. Man, I like. I'm not a big fan of the whole like which is the best year in sneakers conversation. Right?
Yeah, and that will happen later this year for sure.
But it's like this year has been very fun versus like. Because even like regular color stuff is like regular colorways, no collab stuff has been great too. And walking into a store and seeing like the Pegasus Premium and just being like, oh, I really like these, and these look great. And or even the Adidas Evo SL. So good too. I do think that we're coming into this like. It's more fulfilling for people who really enjoy sneakers now, because not everything is instantly selling out. So now we can pick and choose without that like scarcity tactic of like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose it. I gotta get it. Get it. Obviously, we'll have like moments like the undefeated 4s where everybody's like, I gotta get them, or the Awake 5s where people are going crazy for them at the last second. But we have seen some really good. Just like sneakers every month. Like I don't think there's been a bad like week or month of sneakers, all the sneaker releases. To be honest,
there's been like at the end of July, I was like, oh, okay, August looks pretty quiet, and then it wasn't at all. So it's like every month, I guess, and then even in September, you've kind of got the hype building around like the Travis Scott Fragment shoes that are coming out. Those have kind of been seen for, I reckon, at least 7 to 8, 9 months. People have seen those on feet. Like the release of those is kind of going to be interesting. I think that there was someone who said that they were only going to be on Travis Scott's Cactus Jack website, which is crazy. Like no sneakers release, which is pretty wild. Which, as an Australian, we don't often get the same amount of shoes, if not like the same shoes that you get. Like you're talking about picking up the Yu-Gi-Oh shoes, that they're not coming to Australia. Like we don't get them in any sort of online release. So it'll either be like a resale pickup for some people. But those kind of
VPN.
Yeah.
and then you got to send it to your friend,
Yeah.
and then they send it to you. I mean, it's gonna
Yeah.
be expensive,
Yeah. Yeah.
'cause but you got to, there's, I mean, look, there's people in Canada that figure it out. They
Yeah.
do it. They order it, ship it to their friends, ship it to some house in, in Michigan,
Yeah.
cross the border, come back. Like,
Yeah.
there's ways to do it.
Yeah.
I think you, by any means necessary, is
Yeah.
always part
Yeah.
of the sneaker game.
Yeah, that is very true. Any size necessary? People are like, I don't have a size. I'm just a sneakerhead. I can make it work, for some certain sizes. But I mean, I am 9,000 miles away, and the shipping costs to get to Australia sometimes
Yeah, I know.
is pretty wild. But
That's all you got to do. You got to do one big bulk. Like, you
yeah,
go, all right. Be like to your friend, I don't know,
yeah,
Gary. Yo,
yeah,
Gary, all right, I'm gonna VPN and send these to you, and then just send me one big box in July.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so then you just get a whole shipment,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
hopefully customs doesn't be like, oh my god,
yeah.
we gotta stop this, man. These are drugs, but like, but yeah.
I mean, people have made the correlation or comparison between drugs and sneakers at certain points. There's a sense of addiction there sometimes for a lot of people. But those Jordan Lows are probably going to be very, very hard to get here in Australia, and we've kind of seen them. And I think that like you said, every month has kind of been pretty crazy. And even as we wind down towards the end of the year, you're going to start to see a bunch of top 10 lists and stuff. I reckon you're going to see people having top 20 lists just because of how many shoes there were. And there's going to be shoes that we've totally forgot about. Like, even at the start of the year, the ones that kind of pulled everyone's attention was like the Bread 85s or the Jordan 1 Unions.
Right.
And those have kind of been sort of forgotten in some ways. People are like, oh, was that 2025? Or was that no? Yeah, like they kind of forget what year it was because it feels like so many things have been coming out so far. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's great as someone who loves collecting sneakers and does them for content and stuff. Like, it's really made it very easy to talk about sneakers and make content around sneakers all the time for the whole year. So I've loved it. Like, it's been great. And yeah, don't try and pick everything up because it's almost impossible to, not only because of where you are, but because of the monetary aspect of it. It's really, really hard. But you just got to kind of hold back. Like that Awake 5, I'm not really a fives guy. Have a couple, but yeah, it just didn't move me that much. Was it a shoe that you kind of were really, really interested in, especially being in New York, Awake, kind of that connection? Did you feel that kind of energy in the city?
Oh, the energy was definitely in the city. I went to the Awake event also. I got to meet Angelo. Angelo, hopefully future guest of the podcast. He's from my block too. Not like my block, but my area.
Yeah.
So I was like leaning in and like, yo, man, Queens, man. Like, that's what I was trying to get him in. But like, my honest thoughts on the Air Jordan 5 is they didn't really move me.
Yeah.
Like, I was still trying to stick to the 6 pairs, even though there's been some pairs I'm not counting into the 6 that have been bought. But it was a shoe that, like, I mean, my friend worked on them. He did the Andy Boots and 0831 AM. He's the guy that does the boots into like Air Forces.
Yep. I saw that. Yep.
Yeah. So he made his own Awake 5 with the cowboy boot part on it too. So those are sick. I think that I like the black and blue pair because they're just clean in my opinion. But the pink pair is cool. But after the Piggy Runners, the Grandma's Couches, I mean, Joe Freshco dropped the pink shoe. I was just pinked out, to be honest. Like, I was just like, this is how many, because it's like, how many pink shoes, like, how many pink shoes can you really own?
Yeah.
And as soon as I got the Piggy Racers, I was just like, I'm good. I don't need another all pink shoe.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of hard to pull off, especially if you're not considered as sort of a fashion person. There's a lot of people who are sneakerheads that are into fashion as well. I wouldn't consider myself one of them. I try to, dress in a somewhat complimentary way to sneakers, but I'm not trying to be real loud with it and try and match, that sort of thing. I'm just trying to let the sneakers do the talking, so to speak. I suppose you might do the same, but you've obviously got some style, some chains, you got the hat, I feel like you could rock some of the Awake 5s. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I could. I mean, I bought the I I just think it's just putting that into the rotation also. I was just thinking like, when is the last time I even wore my piggy runners? And it's just like, you know, now I'm like, okay, then I gotta rotate in a Wake 5 pink, but I'm like, I also don't want to pay $200 and something for that either. So all of that plays into it. I at the end of the day, if you love it, I love it. That's how I always tell people, like, not everything's for everybody.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you can, if you can get a fit off, you can get a fit off.
Yeah, man, it's been a really wild release. I'd really like to see that event in the park. Again, the events that have happened this year, from the Cortez 95s that we saw, for it's just so many different events. That Action Bronson pop-up he had in New York, man.
Yeah.
Like, all that sort of stuff is just so awesome, and I love to see that there's been a little bit of a comeback this year in terms of in-person events, and I'm sure you kind of being in and around it has kind of felt that. And yeah, again, FOMO. I'm feeling like I want to, get to New York, be there, but life is what it is. It's reality.
I will say, because I know you said that earlier, I will say, bro, just make it. Just make it. Make a little sneaker meetup with your people. You start with one thing, and then you kind of bring in a small sneaker store. Then you can do that. Like, you don't. FOMO is. I like FOMO because it creates. Like creativity out of it. Like you're either gonna feel like, okay, I'm gonna save up my money to get to New York to go to the next one. But I always tell people, just do tempo stuff. Like, if you're like, yo, I want to do like Complex Con, like do like big events, because it's not worth it to come out just for like one thing if you're not going to get anything out of it, right? So like if you can do it, but going back to what you were saying, just like, what I was saying, what you should do though is you should definitely just like build something. Like, it's always you can people think like, you built this, right?
Yeah.
You weren't waiting for another Australian person to be like, I want to make a sneaker podcast, right?
Yeah.
So now you're like, hey, I'm missing out on all the cool stuff. Let me make some cool stuff here. And then you never know what that sparks. So yeah.
In the immortal words of Kevin Costner, build it and they will come. So
yes, build it and they will come.
Yeah. Incredible movie. If anyone hasn't seen Field of Dreams, please stop what you're doing right now and watch Field of Dreams, one of the greatest films of all time.
No, don't stop what you're doing. Finish this episode. Watch it after.
Yes, please. But I really do appreciate Hass coming on again. If you haven't seen any of his stuff, go and check out his Instagram, the podcast. Man, it's a great listen. He's got some great content as well. So, and you do a great job of editing as well, like all of that together. So I know you've got a nice studio set up there that you can kind of rely on and make everything look good, sound good. Really do appreciate that. As kind of a tech kind of nerd, I do appreciate the visuals and how good the audio sounds. So well done on that. That's really cool. I guess
shout out my friend's basement. Like, they helped me out big time. I've been trying to get more people to whenever they're in town to use them as well. So I know I kind of made it like it seemed like this is my studio type of thing, but no, this is for rent. You can rent, and you can use my link too, also.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, hey, send me that link and I'll put it in the description as well so people can check that out. So again, I really do appreciate it, man. We've had a great conversation about your podcast, about the sneakers coming out, and just kind of getting to know you a little bit more. And hopefully we can, get you back on at any time if you feel like you want to chat a bit more about sneakers. I know you're like a host, so being on the other side might be a little bit more of a different experience for you. So hopefully you've had a bit of fun chatting about sneakers and your podcast and everything. So I suppose, is there any sort of last minute shout outs or any sort of last words you kind of want to say before we hop off for the evening?
I mean, I feel like the moral of this story is believe in yourself. Like, the moral of this episode, right? Like, if you are listening to this and this is your first time ever hearing about my podcast, or wondering what it is to have a podcast or to build something and kind of like immerse yourself in culture, to kind of that's the one thing I do got to talk about more, is that whenever I get into something, I really throw myself into it, right? Like, and I do think that's necessary for this, right? You got to be everywhere everywhere at all times and be like, want to be a sponge. You have to be a sponge. You want to like ask people. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to hit me up and be like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. What do I need? Or hit up Harry and be like, yo, I'm thinking about, interviewing people. How do you go about it? Like there are people that will tell you no, but for every no, just remember the yes that and the advice that you get from people will come in handy. And so, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to start. Believe in yourself.
Yeah, and don't get discouraged either. That's what I'd say. Yeah, so in everything, kind of keep pushing, keep doing what you're doing, whether it's sneakers, sports, whatever it is. The success is kind of just around the corner. So thank you again for those very wise words, mate. And again, we'll be checking out your podcast for any future episodes. And thank you so much to everybody for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for subscribing. Do all the internet things. Comment if you like this episode. Go check out Hass's stuff. And thank you so much to everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a good day.